Hey everyone, it's Mark from Flight Sim School, and with the holiday season upon us, you might find yourself with a little bit of extra spending money over the next few weeks from gifts that you've received. So I put together a list of some of the things to keep an eye on since there are likely to be some decent deals available over the next few weeks as well. We're going to have a look at a few different types of peripherals that can take your experience to the next level, and then we'll look at some airplanes that I already have that I found are well worth the money, as well as some that I'm keeping an eye on if a deal happens to come up over the coming weeks. And we'll wrap everything up with a quick look at scenery that can help to make your flight sim look as real as it gets. We're going to start off by looking at peripherals because it's one of the top ways that you can improve your sim, and there are a lot of different ways that you can go with this, but I'm going to start with a recommendation for beginners, and that's to get a set of rudder pedals if you don't have any yet. Adding rudder pedals is probably the biggest difference maker that you can make in terms of immersion because it allows you to learn and understand more about the yawing action of the airplane, and it also helps with braking because it goes from being an on or off action to something that you can apply linearly. It also helps you on the ground for taxiing small airplanes around, and you can use them for taxiing airliners too, even though nose wheel steering in an airliner isn't driven by rudder pedals in the real world, but for flight sim it's going to be totally fine. There are a few different options and quality levels from Thrustmaster, Turtle Beach, Logitech, and Honeycomb soon as well, but to be honest, I have the TFRP pedals, which are basically entry-level pedals, and they're a perfectly fine place to start. The next biggest difference maker, if you can find a good deal, is getting a quality throttle quadrant. And again, there are a few different options, so it's really a matter of looking at what's on sale and if it makes sense for what you fly the most. If you're like me and you like to fly a little bit of everything, the best option by a mile is going to be the Honeycomb Bravo. I managed to snag mine for about $75 off last Christmas, and even though there are a few downsides to it, overall it allows me to configure it for anything from a single engine prop all the way to a 4-engine airliner in just a couple of seconds, and it really can't be beat in that respect. On top of that, you also get an autopilot panel, a gear lever, and a bunch of switches that by default are going to be mostly bound to the lights, although you can change that so it does almost anything you want in the airplane. Oftentimes though, to get a good throttle quadrant, you'll have to buy it as a pack with a yoke, like the Turtle Beach Velocity is a good example of that. The only downside though is just the bulkiness of these yokes on your desk. My flight sim space is also my office space, so pulling a yoke on and off the desk all the time would get really annoying. So you want to make sure before you go this route that you have enough space on your desk so that instead of taking it on and off, you can just slide it over when you don't need it. There are a couple of stick and throttle combos on the market that you'll likely be able to find on sale somewhere as well, be it the TCA Airbus pack, the T16000, or other similar ones to those two, but the only thing to be careful of with them is the number of axes that they have. The military style stick and throttles especially, oftentimes they'll have only 2 axes on the throttle, and sometimes it'll be even just the one, and as cool as they look, I don't think they're the best way to go for flight sim, especially if you mostly want to fly general aviation. The Thrustmaster TCA and the Boeing throttle are both great for flying their respective airliner types, and the controls even mostly look like what they would look like in the real plane as well. So if you mostly fly either one of Boeing or Airbus, then this is going to be a good option for you. You can also program these throttles to work for general aviation or make an Airbus throttle work for a Boeing and vice versa. And if you get the combo pack with either the Airbus side stick or the Boeing yoke, then you're going to have either 3 or 4 axes that you can program to operate the different throttle quadrant levers, which will work for most planes even if it's not ideal. This is really why I recommend to think about what you fly most frequently and get what fits that the best, and then make other airplane types work around it as well, because there isn't one perfect solution for everything, although the Honeycomb is the most flexible and extensible of the bunch, but it does come at that higher price point as well. Now you're going to notice that I haven't talked about VR at all. And for me, unless you truly have a top of the line machine, I think you're better off focusing on improving your experience with higher end peripherals like we've just been talking about. And if you want something to make it easier to look around, there's always the Tobii Eye Tracker or Track IR. The great thing about Tobii or even Track IR is it doesn't require you to have a high-end machine. It'll work with pretty much anything, and it won't affect your frames in a noticeable way either. And on top of that, it just gives you that little bit more immersion because you can just turn your head or look up or down or around a pillar in the airplane to be able to see where you're going. That's going to wrap it up for peripherals, and the next big place where there's always a ton of sales during the holidays is the marketplace, but there is a ton of noise in there too, so you have to be very careful and you have to know what you're looking for. We're going to look at all of that in just a second, but I want to remind you to like the video if you've picked up an idea or two about what you could potentially look at getting over the holiday period, and subscribe as well so you can get more guides like this one, as well as all of my detailed tutorial series that I make, which are really the meat and potatoes of this channel. Alright, so I'm going to share with you all the things that I'll be keeping an eye on in the marketplace over the next few weeks, and also a few items that I already have that I've gotten my money's worth. So it won't be a completely exhaustive overview of everything that's there, but it'll cover a wide range of things you should definitely consider if a good deal happens to pop up. Now, if you're on PC and you have the option to buy directly from a developer on their website with the same deal as you're going to get in the marketplace, you should probably buy it there instead. But you can still use the marketplace as a tool to discover what's on sale. Even if you don't end up buying it there, it saves you from having to check each individual developer's website to see what's what. Some items might only be on sale in the marketplace, so in some cases that might be your only choice if you want to get a discount. However, some developers like I Builds allow you to transfer your purchases to their store, so long as you provide them with proof of purchase afterwards. Alright, let's start out with airplanes, and one of my first stops when the post-Christmas sales are going to come up is Just Flight, because they have a ton of high-quality airplanes available right now. The BAE 146 especially has been in my hangar for a while now, and it's a ton of fun to fly. My only warning with that one and the F-28 is that they probably aren't the best airliners for beginners. You definitely want to have some airliner experience before trying either of those on for size. The Black Square products that are published by Just Flight don't appear in the marketplace, probably because they're only available for PC. And although they're all fun to fly, the number one to keep an eye out for is the TBM 850, which is probably the best or second best turboprop available right now in flight sim. SimWorks Studios are the next ones that I'd have a look at. I've flown the Kodiak a fair bit, so I can recommend that one wholeheartedly. And the PC-12 that's been recently released seems like a great follow-up in the turboprop category, and you really can't go wrong with either of those options. Another dev that makes pretty high quality renditions is Blackbird. Their 310R is very high on my list if a deal happens to come up for it. And another similar airplane to that one that's well received is the FlySimware 414. Both are 2-engine piston planes, so they fulfill the same role, and you really only need one or the other. The best end-to-end experience in terms of depth to simulation that's released in the last 12 months, though, is the A2A Comanche. And it's also recently been released on the marketplace as well, so it's well worth paying the full price for it. But if you see a discount for it, definitely pick it up. If you're looking for fun or esoteric planes that are well done, you should have a look at Got Friends lineup. I've been picking up the Wilga for a while now because it seems to be very universally liked, and they have a bunch of other weird and wonderful airplanes if you're looking for something a little bit different. In terms of modern airliners, the only two that I would look at if you don't have them yet are the PMDG 737 and the Phoenix A320, because they're by far the most polished payware airliners in flight sim at the moment. And if you need to pick between which 737 model to buy, I've got a video that covers all of the pros and cons of each of them, and I'll link to that in the description as well. There are a bunch of other airliners in the marketplace though, from 727s to A330s and a whole bunch more, but to be honest, none of them really have the quality level that I expect for payware products. The other option, if you want to fly in the high flight levels, but you don't want to spend too much time learning a complex airliner, keep an eye on the Flight FX Vision Jet or even the Honda Jet, because they both have a high cruise speed and they can get up to 30,000 feet easily. And they're a lot easier to learn and fly because they have Garmin units for avionics, so the transition's a lot easier. The last thing to keep an eye on in the airplane category are the sound packs that are available from Boris AudioWorks. Both the C152 and the 172 packs add so much richness to the airplane, and if you combine that with a WB Sim mod that's available for them, it makes for a pretty unbeatable experience. Let's move on to scenery, and if you've never bought a third-party airport before, I definitely recommend that you keep a little bit of your flight sim budget to buy one, because it really does change the feeling of immersion that you get when taxiing, taking off, and landing at an airport where everything is in the right spot and it looks like a real live place. You can start with an airport that you fly into or out of frequently to get a feel for it, and just like with the airplanes in the marketplace, there are going to be a ton of deals around for the larger international airports and a lot of the smaller regional ones too. For me, the top tier of scenery developers includes INI Build, Fly Tampa, Flightbeam, and Orbex. And there are a bunch of other good ones too, like Latin VFR, FS Dream Team, and a couple of other ones too, but that should get you started to find an airport that you're interested in. The only thing to be careful of is if you have a lower end spec machine, the sceneries can come at a cost of some frames per second and you'll have some stutters when you're flying around near them, especially for the larger international airports. But some developers like INI Builds allow you to manage what gets rendered and what doesn't to save you on frames and tailor it to your needs. And lastly, before we wrap up, I want to take just a second to wish you all the best possible holiday season. I appreciate each and every one of you who take the time to watch these videos, and I hope to see you all back in the new year.